Well, Quentin Tarantino has been making the rounds during his press tour for his new book. I believe it's cinema speculation is what is what he's promoting now, and the topic of his one and only movie that bombed, Death Proof, came up. This article from Variety: Quentin Tarantino calls Death Proof bombing a shock to my confidence. Says his films lack sex because it hasn't been necessary. Quentin Tarantino has been making the international press rounds in support of a cinema speculation book tour, recently speaking of Spain's Diari ARA. I think I mispronounced that horribly. I have not taken Spanish in probably 10 years. But anyway, speaking to Spain's Diary ARA, I'm just going to call it Diary, just to make it simpler, about how one of his only box office bombs shook his confidence as a film director. That bomb would be Death Proof, Tarantino's 2007 stuntman action thriller starring Kurt Russell that was released domestically as one half of the movie Grindhouse. The article does have a grammatical error. They said that it was Tarantino's 2017 movie. It actually came out in 2007. The other half of Grindhouse was Robert Rodriguez's Planet Terror. The Grindhouse release earned $25 million, while Death Proof picked up only $30 million overseas in its standalone release. Quote, I have been lucky enough to write stories that have connected with many people, and this has allowed me to practice my art without the restrictions that most filmmakers have, Tarantino told the publication. Now, a funny thing happened. For a while, I was getting a lot of project proposals until the studios ended up assuming that I do my own stories and it wasn't worth the effort. But after Death Proof, which didn't do well at the box office and was a bit of a shock to my confidence, I started getting proposals again. They must have thought perhaps now he's touched and his temper has gone down. Now is the time, Tarantino added. And there's nothing wrong with making commission movies for Hollywood. They always offer me interesting projects, but I preferred to reinvest in myself and made Inglourious Bastards. End quote. The filmmaker admitted in a 2021 interview with Empire Magazine that he overestimated audiences' excitement for a double feature release like Grindhouse. Quote, with Grindhouse, I think me and Robert just felt that people had a little more of a concept of the history of double features and exploitation movies, Tarantino said at the time. No, they didn't at all. They had no idea what the fuck they were watching. It meant nothing to them, all right? What we were doing. So that was the case of being a little too cool for school. But as far as the movie playing in England as the movie, I think people took it okay. End quote. The filmmaker also touched upon the lack of nudity and sex scenes in his movies while speaking to Diary ARA. Outside of Robert De Niro and Bridget Fonda and Jackie Brown, there isn't much sex to be found in Tarantino's filmography. Quote, it's true sex is not part of my vision of cinema, Tarantino said. And the truth is that in real life, it's a pain to shoot sex scenes. Everyone is very tense, and if it was always a bit problematic to do it before, now it is even more so. If there had ever been a sex scene that was essential to the story, I would have, but so far it hasn't been necessary, end quote. Tarantino was eyeing a false start for what will be his 10th and final feature directorial effort. The movie critic, while rumors have claimed the 1970s set movies inspired by Pauline Kael, Tarantino has said the movie will be centered on a male film critic. And all I have to say to you guys is this. I don't think Death Proof is really that bad of a movie, but you have to understand why a lot of people feel that Death Proof is Quentin Tarantino's worst movie, right? The article brings it up that Grindhouse came out in 2007 and it bombed spectacularly, only made $25 million. So what the Weinsteins did at the time was they decided to basically release Planet Terror and Death Proof as two completely separate movies. Right, and have them not connected to each other. Now, with the Planet Terror DVD release, and I know this because I did have the DVD release for a long time. How Planet Terror is presented on the DVD release is exactly how it was presented in theaters at the time, complete with the gag trailer for Machete. But then once you get to Death Proof, not only are all of the other gag trailers cut out, so you have Rob Zombie's Werewolf Women of the SS, Eli Roth's Thanksgiving gag trailer, which is being made into a movie. By the way, that news did break about like a month or two ago that Eli Roth is actually going back and actually making a Thanksgiving movie, and Edgar Wright's Don't gag trailer. Right, all of those ended up getting cut, And when they released Death Proof to DVD, they actually made the movie longer. One of the biggest differences between the way it was presented theatrically and the way that it's and the DVD release is that on the DVD release they fully restored the lap dance. Right, if you watch it the way that it came out originally in theaters, the lap dance was completely cut out. So all I'm gonna say is this: if you want to watch Death Proof, you have to watch the Grindhouse presentation of it because it is 10 times better. Like I said, the DVD release extended the movie by 15 to 18 minutes, and it really didn't make it any better. In fact, it made it a lot worse. And there is a Blu-ray release for the Grindhouse double feature. It's just called Grindhouse, and I do have this release. I don't know if it's available digitally, but for all of you that absolutely hate Death Proof, consider going back and watching that Grindhouse double feature and watch Death Proof as it was originally intended, because I was on that bandwagon of Death Proof is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. After watching that Grindhouse double feature, I don't think that is, and I will never rewatch my individual Blu-ray release of that movie ever again.